Now, how insane can you be and still become president of the United States? Many thought and still believe that Donald Trump is crazy. Clinton was labeled a narcissist, Nixon paranoid, and Theodore Roosevelt bipolar. John F. Kennedy was said to have psychopathic traits, and Abraham Lincoln experienced suicidal depression. Now, with Joe Biden trying to shake hands with an invisible being, calling his vice president the president and first lady, the White House had to send the Easter Bunny to save Biden from saying something crazy. Anything can happen in America these days. While questioning the sanity of Biden, one starts to think if any president was sane going into the White House in the first place.
Cuckoo's Nest, aka the White House.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to We the People. I'm your host, Daniel Arya, and in this episode, we'll discuss the mental state of the U.S. president. What are the conditions for a president to be deemed unfit to carry out his duties? What do the American public think about the president's mental stability? And what will happen if the president is unfit for the job, and who decides if he is or is not? As usual, we're pleased to have our two guests on our program, David Cadillo, Director of Education for the Center for Political Innovation and founder of San Angelo Solidarity from San Angelo, Texas, and Dr. Rick Stagenborg, retired psychiatrist and political activist, joining us out of Oregon. Stay tuned.
In 2006, a study conducted by the Journal of Nervous and Mental Disease concluded that half of the U.S. presidents between 1776 and 1974 were mentally ill. Half of the mentally ill were depressed, including James Madison, Dwight Eisenhower, and notably Abraham Lincoln, who was also believed to suffer from psychosis. 20% were alcoholics, which includes Richard Nixon, whose staff struggled so he wouldn't make important decisions in the evenings. Another study in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology from 2012 concluded that JFK was a psychopath, but added that certain features of psychopathy are tied to successful interpersonal behavior.
Now, as American mental health concerns are on the rise, and according to a survey by the CBS Health and Morning Consult, about 60% of Americans experience concerns about their own mental health or of family and friends. The mental state of the person running the country is also a subject of discussion. According to a Morning Consult November poll, 50% of voters surveyed disagreed that Joe Biden is in good health. So can you explain the question of mental stability of U.S. presidents going on today in America?
It's actually very interesting. I did some research into the topic, and it seems that many presidents over the years have had their mental stability called into question, but never to the extent we're seeing now over the past two administrations. It's literally night and day. Even George Washington himself, the founder of our country, had his mental stability called into question, but that's something you don't learn about or something that isn't widely talked about. But these things are much more overblown than they have been in the past, and I think that really has to do with the extreme polarization that we've been seeing in America today. No longer can you have a general conversation with somebody without it becoming so extremely political charge in one direction or the other that name calling and slurs of any sort are the obvious outcome whenever all rational debate goes out the window. So you're going to have these little spits and spats, and I think that's what has caused the recent uptick in the question of mental stability.
Now, President Joe Biden, when elected, was asked about potential fundamental disagreements with his vice president and said that he'll come up with some disease and resign. Although he did not specify if he meant that he'll have to resign or Kamala Harris, but it doesn't seem to be difficult for him to come up with a disease. Now, in that Morning Consult November poll, we told you about 48% of voters surveyed believe that Joe Biden is not mentally fit. And before Donald Trump, were there other cases of presidents believed to be unfit to serve in the U.S. high office?
Yes, there have been a couple of cases at least. Woodrow Wilson suffered a massive stroke, and The evidence shows that his wife was probably in charge of the White House at that time. And then there was Franklin Delano Roosevelt didn't die immediately after his stroke, and there's some question of who was running the White House for a while before he died. I think there was not a transfer of power at that time, but I guess now that I think about it, I couldn't swear to that last one, sorry. But yeah, this is the first time since then, for sure. There was some speculation, of course, during the Reagan years, and he actually did turn out to be in the early stages of dementia, but nothing like this, where there was official questioning in some quarters.
Even though the United States has never been short of crazy presidents, and U.S. politicians call each other crazy all the time, the situation seems as though it's becoming worse.
I walked into the cabinet room. You had the group, Crying Chuck, Crazy Nancy. I tell you what, I've been watching her, and I have been watching her for a long period of time. She's not the same person. She's lost it. It was sad when I watched Nancy all moving, the movement and the hands and the craziness. And I watched it. That's, by the way, a person that's got some problems. I'm an extremely stable genius.
The president is old. Donald Trump was the oldest president at 70 years of age when he took office. And just 4 years later, Joe Biden broke his record while being 78 years old when he was inaugurated.
Well, when we talk about the age of presidents, we have to look back at what past presidents have done in regards to the issues of aging presidents and the questions of their mental stability. During the Carter administration in 1944, they actually attempted to create a mental health monitoring agency for the president of the United States, which would do routine evaluations to see if the president's mental stability was still in a fit state. But as we know now, that commission never got its legs and has not become an official part of the U.S. government's system of checking a president, making sure that everything is up to code, everything's what the people desire. Now the only check in that regard is the campaign trail and the performance in office.
Above all,
Joe Biden has been caught on camera trying to shake hands with an invisible being. The State Department and the White House were on occasion forced to clarify Biden's words and statements, calling them his own personal views and not the policy of the administration. Biden has also referred to Vice President Kamala Harris as the president and at another time the First Lady. He also called Michelle Obama the vice president. Just recently, the Easter Bunny had to rescue Biden and take him away when he was asked the question by a reporter at the White House Easter egg roll.
The bigger question is who makes those decisions in the first place. Is he just reading off somebody else's script or not? And I'm being a little tongue-in-cheek, of course, because the president does speak off sometimes not off a teleprompter. He's famous for making gaffes, even when his mental faculties were not in question. But the kind of things he's saying now are very dangerous and really you wouldn't expect a person with his background to say. They're not gaffes. They're incredibly hard to explain after the fact. And this is a perfect example. I mean, essentially calling for the overthrow of another government when he pretends that the United States is not into regime change is a crazy misstatement for somebody with all his faculties.
The divide in the U.S. is becoming larger and the political establishment weaker and less fit to govern. With 2 consecutive presidents being constantly called crazy, and pressure has been increasing from the public and other politicians for them to step down or have the 25th Amendment to be invoked. Now, these calls were especially done during the time of Donald Trump, where many felt that he was dangerous and should not have the power over the nuclear bomb.
The 25th Amendment clearly states that if a president is physically incapacitated, mentally incapacitated, or deceased, that it would go into a line of succession, starting with the vice president, then going on to the Senate majority leader, and then yada, yada, yada down the line. And I think those are things that are seriously need to be used. There is a reason that these mechanisms were put inside of the Constitution, and it is to weed out these sort of mentally unstable applicants, no matter how that be. And I know, especially nowadays, when talking about the field of mental health and mental stability, it's so politically charged that you can't touch it with a 10-foot stick without somebody calling you some sort of hater of disabled people or some things. But these are very serious issues. And as somebody who knows many people who have struggled with mental health issues, I think it's very serious that we take these topics and not brush them aside, because we need to be seriously asking, are these people mentally fit? Are they stable enough to be able to go and lead this country, the second largest economy in the world? It's not taking over to drive my car or something. This is taking over the keys to a huge, massive military, economic superpower.
The 25th Amendment has been put in place so when the president is removed, dies or resigns, he would be replaced by the vice president. Also, when the vice president and a majority of either the principal officers of the executive departments or of such other body as Congress declare that the president is unable to carry out the duties of the office, the president might be removed from power through a process and replaced by the vice president.
A really hypothetical situation. I think it's incredibly unlikely that that's going to happen. If it did, it would probably be a political reason, such as if Biden suddenly got so demented that he started talking peace in Ukraine, then they might do something like that. And it's hard telling what the deep state would be willing to do at that point. They've proven that they'll do whatever it takes to keep themselves in power. We saw that during the Kennedy administration. We saw that when they got rid of Carter with the October surprise. There's many, many examples that they'll do what it takes.
Some conservatives like TV host and political commentator Tucker Carlson have asked that the 25th Amendment be invoked because of Biden's cognitive decline. He has said that Biden, who is 79, cannot control his emotions due to his age, and that his behavior is more dangerous than the one of Trump's.
Focus on this man, what he's doing, that no president has ever done. No president.
No, I haven't taken a test. Why the hell would I take a test? Come on, man. That's like saying before you got in this program, if you take a test where you're taking cocaine or not, what do you think, huh? Are you a junkie?
What do you say? I'm not out of time. You spoke over time, and I'm going to talk. Here's the deal. The fact of the matter is, look at what's happening here.
Well, that's not true. You're saying things you do not know what you're talking about. No one said that. Who said that? Who said that?
You said I set up my son to work in an oil company. Isn't that what you said? Get your words straight, Jack. Do you think you place this a political liability? That's a great asset. More inflation. What a stupid son of a.
Now, Washington Post reporter Bob Woodward has said that a crazy president could on his own trigger a nuclear war. He says that the country needs to perform the operation of the 25th Amendment because in 2020, the military feared that an unstable Donald Trump was about to order a nuclear strike on China. So are key decisions being made by unstable and unfit presidents?
You know, I think when we talk about who's making the key decisions through the State Department, through the presidency, we can clearly see a pattern growing throughout most U.S. presidents in our modern era, especially. It's that they service imperialism and they service the forces of the State Department that a lot of us would call the deep state. And saying this phrase, the deep state, it's people say, oh, it's just some conspiratorial nonsense that's going on. But when you really think about it, it is just the positions inside of the U.S. State Department in which do not require elected officials to hand out those positions. There are people who move up through the ladder over and over, year after year, the revolving doors from different ABC alphabet government agencies through high-paid Raytheon, New York Times, you name it. These places are just revolving doors for imperialism, and the powers that be will be pushing through their agenda, whether it be a red person in the White House or a blue person in the White House. So,
in 2017, forensic psychiatrist and president of the World Mental Health Coalition, Bandy X. Lee, edited a book called The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump. 27 psychiatrists and mental health experts assess a president, which is essays warning about the dangers of Trump's mental instability and that his psychological problems make him dangerous. Dr. Lee's teaching position at Yale University was terminated in 2020, since according to the university, Lee broke the Goldwater rule. What are the implications of an unstable president?
The implications, I'm sure I don't have to tell anyone listening to this program, would be absolutely disastrous potentially. The nuclear codes can be activated by the president at a few minutes' notice. I heard this growing up a lot in schools. 1 minute a president could be sitting in his Oval Office, White House office, and then 3 minutes later he could walk outside and launch nuclear weapons at any place in the entire world. And that is real power that the president of the United States holds. And if we're not making sure that that power is kept under the correct hands, we're essentially playing with a lighter inside of a match factory. We're playing with something we know has extremely deadly power, and yet we're just not having the proper precautions to be able to dole out and make sure there's restraints on this power.
Republican pollster Neil Newhouse has noted that an impacting factor in Biden's low approval ratings is his clear difficulties in communicating. He reiterated that the president is losing support in black voters who are his most loyal Democratic segment of the electorate. When asked if she would support Biden in 2024, one respondent joked, "If he's alive."
It's a little hard to tell. You have to really examine people serially to see how much difference there is. With Trump, from what I've seen, it's a little harder to tell whether he had any deterioration. He wasn't terribly swift in the first place. And Biden, while he's no intellectual giant, he certainly was better organized in the way he presented himself and the way he spoke a decade ago than he is now. But he's also doing much better than he did during the campaign. Now, people have to realize that during a campaign, it's an exhausting schedule. And for most people of that age, they would show some cognitive deficits. I would, and I'm younger than him. I know when I get fatigued, I have some problems with memory and articulation and word finding. For somebody of his age, it's a bigger problem. Not for everybody. I mean, we all know people in their 90s who are sharp as a tack.
Now, it's unclear how crazy or mentally ill you have to be before you're considered unfit for the office of the President of the United States. But given the mental state of many U.S. presidents, and that many believe that the president is more of an actor than an actual decision maker, it seems that the question shouldn't be about a president being unfit to carry out his duties because of his mental illness, but quite the opposite. How crazy must one be to be able or allowed to become president of the United States? And now it's time we see what Abbas Montarim has prepared for us.
Peace, and welcome back to Power to the People. On today's episode, we're going to take a look at the facade of the Democrats and Joe Biden being seen as quote-unquote less evil in comparison to Donald Trump and the Republicans. You know, it's no secret that in the 2020 presidential election, Joe Biden was seen as the less evil choice, and that he was so much of a better option than Donald Trump. And it's very clear that both of them have some type of mental disorders. I mean, white supremacy itself has got to be considered as some form of psychosis, as literally they think they're superior to black people and people of color, which is just comical. But anyway, why is it that Biden is seen as better than Trump? Is it because he's less outwardly racist? Is it because he isn't as overtly and loudly fascist like Donald Trump? The last time I checked, a fascist is still a fascist. And we have to call Biden exactly what he is, which is a white settler and an imperialist. And his policies from his administration are wreaking havoc on the world. And it's funny that people think that Biden and the Democrats are somehow less racist. And people sometimes have the nerve to utter the word progressive in reference to Biden and the Democrats. But in reality, Joe Biden and the Democratic Party, they are neoliberals, which is a conservative right-wing ideology, which was actually popularized by none other than the devil himself, Ronald Reagan. It's the same Ronald Reagan that is responsible for the student loan crisis that we're in today. The same Ronald Reagan who was part of the war on the Black Panther Party. And this is the ideology. Neoliberalism is the ideology of Joe Biden and the Democrats. Yet election year after election year, we is told to vote for whoever the blue person put in front of us. And that is the better option than the Republicans. And if we look at Joe Biden's presidency, he has expanded the police state by encouraging states and localities to use the $350 billion granted to them in the COVID-19 relief package to hire more cops. And the last time I checked, COVID is a virus. And when do cops stop a virus? And instead of building hospitals and improving healthcare and hiring doctors, instead the US government, they said they don't care about the people. And the US government, they do exactly what it does, which is build up its police and build up its military infrastructure so it can occupy black and brown communities. And if we look at Biden's military spending, Biden literally outspent Trump last year, and he is currently requesting that Congress pass $33 billion in requested Ukraine funding. Yet hundreds of thousands of people living in America are living houseless on the street. Black people in Flint, Michigan still have lead in the water. But this is the lesser evil in comparison to Trump. Biden and his administration, they'd rather fund a proxy war than help the poor. Biden also approved the sale of $735 million in precision-guided weapons to the Israeli occupation of Palestine. He also sold $650 million worth of missiles to Saudi Arabia, which is dropping bombs on the people of Yemen with the help of the US and European allies. And these are just a few examples of Biden's militarism. Yet every single election year, they tell us to vote Democrat. But the way I see it and the way that it is evil, whether it's red or blue. And both the Democrats and Republicans work together for their common interests of settler colonialism and imperialism. And why should we vote for evil? Why should we vote for evil? All this, it really just exposes America for what it is. Because in reality, America is simply a one-party state, and the ones who are in control are the corporations who make billions upon billions of dollars off of exploiting the people. And it's up to the people to make the changes. As it's very clear, it's clear as day that both the Republicans and the Democrats are true settler parties and will never be interested in freedom and independence for the people. We must become our own liberators and free the land from Euro-American control. This is Power to the People.
And that was our show, everyone. Thank you for watching. I'm your host, Daniel Arya. Do join us again next week for another episode of We the People. Bye-bye for now.